This is StoryBeat, Storytellers on Storytelling, an exploration into how master storytellers and artists develop and build brilliant stories and works of art that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators of all kinds find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a rating or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. My guest today, Scott Siegel, is the award-winning author of 48 books, from the Encyclopedia of Hollywood to celebrity biographies of stars like Jack Nicholson and Richard Chamberlain. He's also created more than 400 major concerts throughout the world, including writing, directing, and producing shows for Michael Feinstein. He's perhaps best known as the creator, writer, director, and host of Town Hall's signature series, Broadway by the Year, which began its 20th anniversary season in February of 2020. During this COVID-19 crisis, he's been pioneering new programming that guarantees payments to performers with Scott Siegel's Great American Songbook concert series, while also continuing a home edition of Broadway by the Year through Town Hall's YouTube channel. For all those reasons and so many more, it's a great privilege for me to have Scott Siegel as my guest on StoryBeat today. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
I'm great, thank you, and thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
So you've been writing and publishing for a fairly long time. I'm curious, do you think of yourself as a writer first?
Yes, I do. I actually never aspired to a career in show business. I was never wanted to be an actor. Or, I was in a high school. I was cast in a high school production of The Sound of Music, and I dropped out almost immediately because I knew it wasn't for me.
So how did you wind up? How did you wind up focusing on doing shows then? How did you get into this?
Well, it's so funny about these things. Nobody would ever see the progression, but you can always connect the dots going backwards and see how you got there. And basically, it really came from a love of movies. I mean, my wife was always a huge theater fan, and she's the one who really got me involved in theater right as soon as we met a long time ago. But one of the books that we'd written was the Encyclopedia of Hollywood. And as a consequence of that, in the course of promoting the book on radio stations around the country, at one point, I believe it was a DJ in Denver said, "Oh my goodness, you're in New York and you're an expert on the movies. Why don't you come back next week and talk about the movies for us?" And I thought, the light bulb goes on. I said, "Well, geez, rather than be an academic and a book writer, I can be a film critic." So as a consequence of that, every time I got on with somebody to promote the Encyclopedia of Hollywood, I said, "And by the way, I'm doing this thing with Denver, and now I'm doing this thing in Toronto, I'm doing this," and it built up a syndicate of radio stations that we were doing movie reviews for. We called it the Siegel Entertainment Syndicate, and out of that, then we started adding to that and started because my wife's love of the theater and my new love of the theater. We started adding theater to that, and then a friend of ours that we met in the theater circuit was leaving his job as the critic for covering New York for a publication called Monologue, which was the backstage of the West Coast.
Absolutely.
He said, "Why don't you take over our column?" And the Monologue people said, "Sure." And for the next 6 years after that, we wrote the New York column for Monologue, which was actually the best job I ever had because I never met them. They never changed a word of what we wrote. And they said, "You can write whatever you want. It's your column." So we started out writing theater reviews, and we added movie stuff for them. We did all the junkets in New York. I interviewed Barbra Streisand and Woody Allen and everybody, Paul Newman, people like that. So that was great fun. And we added nightclub stuff to it too. So we became really only Rex Reed, William Wolfe, and ourselves were the only people who covered all three things: movies, theater, and nightclubs.
Wow.
Writing.
For the listeners, tell us your wife's name.
Barbara Siegel.
Barbara
And
Siegel.
and she has had quite the distinguished career on her own. She was on the drama desk nominating committee, 12 years as the chairperson of the nominating
Wow.
committee, 18 years of a big chunk of her adult life as a volunteer. Basically, it was an unpaid thing, but she, spearheaded all of the drama desk nominations for 18 years. And for those who are not familiar with the drama desk, the Tony Awards covers just Broadway, and the most important thing after the Tony Awards is the drama desk, because they covered everything, Broadway, off Broadway, and off Broadway. So we were seeing, on average, not counting my own shows, we went out to see 300 shows a year. And this is an important
Wow.
part of the story, because we got to see everybody and everything.
Sure.
And that formed the basis upon which I was able to cast so well all the stuff that I did, because I could say, I like that guy, or I like that woman, and I would pursue them for these shows. So it was like New York was my casting universe, and I didn't need a casting agent because we saw everybody.
You are a master show watcher before anything else.
Yes, I would say so.
And all right, so let's talk about the world of cabaret, which is sort of where your meat and potatoes are. Yes, would you say?
Somewhere between musical theater and cabaret, and I almost hate the word cabaret. I prefer to use the word nightclub.
All right,
nationally better known, I think.
All right, so was it just by going to a lot of nightclub shows that you became fascinated by nightclub, or were you fascinated before you got to see them?
No, it was really big going and seeing what it was all about, and really sort of falling in love with the fact that when somebody gets on a cabaret or nightclub stage, they are the boss. They're in charge. They're the star, and they make everything happen or not happen. And it's an extraordinary art form. And in some cases, it's a very expensive art form. In some cases, it's not. Depending upon the nature of the club, but it's certainly intimate, and it's certainly very expressive, and it allows somebody to both be themselves and be something bigger and greater than themselves. I'll never forget one of the things, it was a long time ago, Faith Prince, when she became a star out of Guys and Dolls.
Yeah.
Right after that, she started doing nightclub shows. And at the end of that first year doing it, she won some awards. And at one of the award ceremonies, she said, the hardest thing I ever had to do was this nightclub show, because the hardest thing I ever had to do in 20 years of being in show business was be myself on stage.
Uh-huh.
And if one can be authentic on stage and still be a showbiz personality, and express oneself in that special way, and still be who you are, it's a real gift.
So would you say that the hallmark is of nightclub or cabaret, whatever you want to call it, would you say that the hallmark of it is that it's an individual performer, usually one, and the spotlight is completely on them, and it's their night, their show?
Yeah, absolutely. And it certainly, if you have all three elements of being a great personality and really comfortable on stage, and if you have a great voice, and you have great theme, and it's a well constructed and well written show, it's magic.
Yeah.
You can get by with even one of those things.
Yeah, I would say without that killer personality, it's less interesting. That's what to me always makes it. That when somebody gets up on stage and that personality blooms through, that's when it's really exciting.
I agree. That's the most important element. Then everything else is an extra. If you have a great voice, terrific. If you've got the package, you're an attractive person, or interesting looking, so that you enjoy looking at that person. That's part of it too, of course. But the main thing is just have the personality that loves the spotlight.
It's a little bit like what happens on Broadway. I see it on a regular basis. I know you do too, where you get sometimes a great singer who can't really act, as opposed to a great actor who can't sing that well, but is able to act their way through a part. I would rather see the great actor who can sing some than the brilliant singer who can't act at all.
Absolutely, that is so true, and certainly we do that too. I'll add one little thing I'm sure we'll get back around to at some point in our conversation. But one of the concerts that we put on every year is a show called Broadway's Rising Stars at Town Hall, and that show is we've done, I believe it's 13 of them every summer, though probably not this summer. But it's
Yeah.
a show that where we audition kids young people in their 20s, mostly early 20s, coming out of performing arts schools all over the country. And it's essentially a national showcase where we launch them into their careers. And we've had some extraordinary successes out of that. Ali Stroker, who won the Tony Award last year as Ada
Yes.
Lanny, she was the girl in the wheelchair, for lack of better expression, was one of our rising stars. And there's a story behind that. But and the guy who's going to be the star of Lin-Manuel Miranda's In the Heights on Broadway, he played the son in Hamilton. And he's going to be playing Lin-Manuel Miranda's part in the Heights in the movie. He's going to be a big movie star.
Wow.
He was one of our rising stars.
What's his name?
Anthony Ramos.
Okay.
And he was, and people might remember him because they saw, oh gosh, what's the name of it? With Lady Gaga.
The concert that was on
No, the big movie that Judy Garland was in. And,
Stars Born.
Stars Born. Thank you so much. In A Star Is Born, he was Lady Gaga's best friend in the club. The guy with the the bun in the back.
Sure.
He sort of left the movie after about 20 minutes or so, but he was prominently in it. It was amazing. We're watching the movie. So, hey, that's Anthony Ramos. What's he doing in there? Anyway,
and not just in the movie, but with Lady Gaga, no less.
Lady Gaga. The point of this of finding these people and getting them started in their careers. Some of them were great singers. Some of them had wonderful personalities. Some of them were really wonderful actors, but didn't sing that well. But we would find it was matching the singer and the song together to make them stand out on stage with whatever they did.
Right. Well, you can go back and look at the history of theater and you can find the easiest one to figure out is Rex Harrison, who couldn't sing a note really, but he would act his way through those songs and he sold the heck out of it, That's what made the difference. I'm going to ask you a really obvious question that most people will understand, but for the listeners, why is it that this is so easily available and prominent in New York? What is it about New York?
That's actually a really good question, and it isn't an obvious question, though it should be. The ancillary to that is, why is it not as popular everywhere?
Right.
But I guess the answer is, first of all, the performers are here. The people who do it, because a lot of it's only really since the advent of Feinstein's 54 Below as Broadway's nightclub that so many Broadway people have been doing it. Usually before that, the Broadway community kind of looked down its nose a little bit at cabaret. But now they've really embraced it, and it's the thing to do in between shows and to sort of show the flag for performers. But I guess part of the reason is for the same reason that theater isn't as prominent everywhere, except in regional theaters and the occasional touring shows that go to the big theaters around the country. Right. That the venues don't exist, and it's and the other thing is the fame issue. I think nightclubs existed more readily back in the day when TV variety shows were everywhere, when you would be on the Ed Sullivan Show or the Jack Paar Show or Michael Douglas or whatever, and you could get a certain amount of national fame relatively quickly. Mm-hmm. By that, and there those venues, those ways to become a name don't exist anymore. So the names that are famous among New Yorkers, that if Brian Stokes Mitchell in New York is a big name, and he tells a story about this, but outside of New York, nobody knows who he is really.
Right.
And he tells a story that he was in the cab on his way to Lincoln Center to perform in something, and he's warming up in the back of the cab. And this guy's a two-time Tony Award winner, and he's head of the Actors Fund and all this stuff. and he's warming up in the back of the cab, and the cab driver says to him, gee, you in show business? And he says, yeah, I am. And the cab driver says, well, you keep working at it. You'll make it. You sound pretty good.
Yeah,
But,
I saw him in Kiss Me Kate with Marin Mazzie. Just
yes.
amazing.
Yeah.
Truly astonishing. All right, so at what point, how long ago was it that you started to put shows together? What triggered it? It was I think you already alluded to it.
It started actually, it's an odd, again, putting the dots going backwards, you wouldn't think of it. But as a film person, having written the Encyclopedia of Hollywood and all that stuff, as I mentioned before, I was teaching a film class at Town Hall. And there are these classes still exist, but they were basically, you would get a movie before it opened, and we had about 700 members in this thing, which was the biggest one in New York, because we had the biggest venue in New York, because Town Hall seats 1,500 people.
Right.
And we would get a movie before it opened and get guests like a director or a star or a producer and interview them. And the film companies would give you the movies for free as a sort of promotion to get word of mouth out from the people who were real serious cinephiles. So I was doing that for, at that point, about 3 years or so, 2 or 3 years. And they liked me at Town Hall. I was good with the audience, and we, I would introduce the movie, I would do the Q&As. And at that time, Town Hall, which is on 43rd Street, right in the heart of the theater district.
Right.
But they didn't have any theater programming. They were doing opera, they were doing third world music, they were doing a lot of jazz, but nothing theater related. So they said to me, and they knew I was related to the theater. They knew me from the movie stuff, but they knew I was a theater critic and all the rest. So they said, can we have a meeting? We'd like to get some theater programming. We need an idea. So I had a meeting with them, and I suggested the idea of Broadway by the Year. It didn't have a title then, but the idea of Broadway by the Year, which is essentially taking 1 year of Broadway, the history of Broadway, and bringing today's stars to sing the songs that were born on Broadway in that year.
What a lovely idea. That's a lovely idea.
Well, they loved the idea. It was a good idea, I have to say. And they said, that's a fabulous idea. Why don't you do it? And I said, well, okay, I would love to do it. Thank you for the offer. But I have to tell you up front, I've never produced anything at all in my life. Not even a puppet show in the backyard for my parents. Never did anything. And they said, well, we see you're a smart guy, and it's your idea, and we like how you are with the audience. You have a good rapport. Why don't you do it? And I said, thank you. Went home to my wife and I said, I'm going to do this thing. And she said, you're out of your mind. You have no experience with anything like this. You're going to die. You're going to get killed. Your reputation will be destroyed. I said, yeah, but it should be fun to do. And I have an idea how to do it. And in fact, while it's changed dramatically from the very first one through all these 20 years, the core idea has never changed, which was that being a little bit of a ham, more than a little bit of a ham, with no talent, mind you, but a ham nonetheless, that I would host these shows and tell the history of the year and the songs and introduce everything. So I was on stage. One of the reasons I wanted to be on stage was I love the performers. I love the, and I'm a relatively short person, and I always like to sit up front because there was heads in front of me and I'm bobbing and weaving to see things.
Right.
And I thought, okay, on stage, I won't miss a thing. I'll have the best seat in the house. So that's slightly facetious, but a little bit true. But again, I had no experience doing it. I just wanted to do it. And the first show, the idea was to do 2 shows as an experiment within the Not Just Jazz. It was a series called Not Just Jazz that Town Hall had. So we booked 2 shows within that season of Not Just Jazz, and this was 20 years ago. I hired 3 people who, again, this comes back to what I said about Barbara, that we went to see everything. And I hired Heather McRae, who was Gordon and Sheila McRae's daughter, who was a cabaret star back then. She was in Hair originally on Broadway. Jason Gra, who is a wonderful musical theater comedy guy.
For sure.
And Sally Mays, who is a Tony nominee. So I had the 3 of them and a pianist and a bass player and me. That was the whole thing. And we decided, and the core of it, as has always been, I decided to do that you needed a famous year as a core where there would be shows that would anchor it, that you'd have some famous songs that the audience could really hang on to. You had something to sell around all the rest of Broadway that people may not remember or know, but they had famous songs in them, but maybe the shows were not so famous. So we did 1943 as the first show, which was the year of Oklahoma as our core. And again, as an inexperienced producer at that time, Jason Graw lives in L.A. and this show was in February, and he said, well, I can only come on the day of the show, and I can't rehearse it during the week before, but I can rehearse it the week before the week. I said, great, I love you, I want to have you. So we rehearsed the whole thing for a week, and then shut it down for a week, and not thinking, we have no understudies, it's February, he's got to fly in the winter, what could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Well, happily, we didn't have a snowstorm, and it was, but he took the red eye, and so he had not slept the night before. He arrives in the morning, and we have rehearsal in the afternoon. So he was exhausted, and we go through the whole thing, and because he was tired, every time he left the stage, he took the microphone with him, rather than leave it for the next performer. So it became an ongoing gag throughout the whole thing. They had to come back with the microphone, and it was just live entertainment, and it was hilarious because he was very funny. And the show, I didn't tell you this other part. So it's 5 minutes before this first show. I've never been on a stage, and certainly it's my first show, and it's in a 1,500 seat theater. It's bigger than most Broadway houses. And I look out of the stage left curtain. I said, my God, this theater's filling up. It wasn't full. It was like 800-900 people.
That's a lot. That's a lot of people.
A lot of people that come for something that they've never heard of before. And I literally started to quake. I was terrified. I was shaking so much. I mean, literally shaking like it was an earthquake going on inside of me. And I can't go out there like that. I just can't go out there like that. So I said to myself, I really had to talk myself down out of my terror. And it's not about me. They're not coming for me. They don't know who I am. I hired wonderful people. They're coming for them, and I feel absolutely secure about them. I know they're going to be great. So calm down. It's not about you. I just took myself out of the equation, and I stopped quaking. And I've actually never been nervous since.
Wow.
Out there, and and the way it's evolved is because I'm not a performer. I always make mistakes, and I fumble a little bit here and there, and I'm not smooth in the way a slick performer or an MC would be. But the audience sees themselves in me. This is how I perceive it anyway. And that I'm their representative on stage. I represent the love they have for this stuff. And so they forgive me all kinds of stuff. And they see that my love of this is the same as their love of it. And so we're all in it together. So anyway, so we did this first show, and it was lovely. It was really fun and great. And we did we did the second one, which was 1957, the year of West Side Story.
Right.
And so the New York Times came to that show, and again we had about 800-900 people, but it wasn't a money review, and we didn't invite them. Stephen Holden from the New York Times came because he knew us from the movie world.
Just showed up. He wasn't even invited.
Well, I didn't invite him. He just came. Maybe Town Hall did. I didn't. And but he wrote a good review, not a money review, but a good review. But it's actually a fabulous review for me about the script that encompassed the whole thing, and big picture in the Times and all the rest. And so then the Town Hall says to me, "Okay, we got a review in the Times. The audiences are coming in sufficient quantity to justify doing this." I said, "All right, so if we're going to do it and go on with this, it needs its own name. We got to take it out of this series and make it its own series." And I came up with the name Broadway by the Year. And I said to them, you've got, as a marketing thing, I had a cousin who was a football Giants, New York football Giants guy, and he had season tickets to it. And he always had those tickets. He never gave them up. And I said, okay, the way we got to do this is we offer seats, and we guarantee to the people who buy them in this first year that if they get those seats, they get to keep them. They don't have to then reapply for new seats every season, so that if you got great seats, you get to keep them. Because as I said, I'm a seat freak. I like to sit where I like to sit.
Right.
and I know there are other people who feel that way. And sure enough, that was one of the keys to the thing, because we had, after 17 years, we had a party after the 17th season of Broadway by the Year, invited all the original subscribers. And there were 200 original subscribers after 17 years who were still with the series and died, had moved to Florida, whatever. And people were amazed. There were that many people who had stuck with it that whole time, never missing a year. And for them, every time they went to they knew all their seatmates, and it was like going to summer camp, because they knew everybody around them because they were all original subscribers. So I'm not sure where it started, but the point is, it became a success. That's how I got into doing this stuff. So at somewhere along the way, as also a critic during all of this time, we would go to Feinstein's at the Regency among all the other clubs that we were covering. And so we got to know Michael Feinstein because we were there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And one day he says to me and my wife, he says, "Why don't you come up with an idea for the club? We'd love for you to, we love what you do at Town Hall. Why don't you come up with a club act for Feinstein's, the Regency," which is the Regency Hotel on the Upper East Side. And I was very flattered, but I didn't have any. I'd only done big concerts. I'd never done anything in a small room. So after about, I don't know, 2 months, I suddenly sat up in bed and I said, "I have it. 11 o'clock numbers at 11 o'clock.
Nice.
And Michael loved the idea. The Regency loved the idea. And so I hired 3 people to become very big stars in our world. Again, because I knew them from the cabaret world and the theater world.
Right.
I hired Scott Coulter, Christina Bianco, I'll tell you about in a minute, and Carol J. Buffer, all of whom have really.
I love Christina Bianco. She's fantastic.
Everybody does. So I hired them, and we did the show every Thursday night, same show every Thursday night at 11 o'clock. For 8 months. Nobody does that anymore. Nobody even did that then, because it was the same show, same stars, no guest stars. It was just them. And and I will say this modestly, I hope, not boastfully, but that really sort of a contemporary legend, because it was such a great show. People just kept coming back to it and back to it and back. We had one person who saw it 12 times. We had people who came whenever they came from out of state. We had a guy from Detroit who used to come. Whenever he came into New York, he would come to see the show again, because the performers were great. And we had a real chance to hone the show because we were doing it over and over again.
Sure. Well, yeah.
After the Regency closed, we ended up doing it Birdland as an annual show, which sold out every time we did it. And then we did it at Feinstein's / 54 Below, and it did great. And then all 3 of them became such big stars I could never get them back together again at the same time without trouble. So I did a new version of that with 3 contemporary fabulous people: Brian Charles Rooney, Farrah Alvin, and this young girl who we found through the Rising Star show that I mentioned, Mia Gerakis. And we've done that at Feinstein's at the region, at Feinstein's 54 Below several times, and we've taken it out of state to do it in places around the country. So we have 2 versions of that. But the point of it is that that's how I got started doing nightclub shows, because
All right,
Michael invited me.
So that gives us a great
long answer to the question.
Yeah, no, it was a great answer. It gives us a lot of background on how, where this came from and how it built, at least a little bit of how it built. What I want to go back and talk about is how you actually put the show together, how each iteration of it is done. So where do you start? What's the first? So you pick a year, right?
Broadway by the Year.
Broadway by the Year. Let's use Broadway by the Year as the exemplar of this. So you pick a year, whatever year it is. Now, you are very familiar with lots of shows, but you probably have to sit down and really look at what shows there were that
I've got to
year.
research. Sure, absolutely. And it was a great learning curve. I mean, people think I know all this stuff, but I don't. I mean, it's just as you say, you have to research it and create something out of it.
And how long does that take you? What's that research time usually like?
Oh God, that's really hard to say. It's sort of like, when Richard Rodgers would say, that he wrote a song in 20 minutes, but he said it took a lifetime to think of how it would how to do it. So I can't really answer that. I mean, to write the show, might take a few days or so, but it's after doing the research and learning about the year, and looking up each show. One of the things we learned was that there are two audiences for Broadway by the year. To boil it down, one is the nostalgia audience who wants to hear the songs they know and love,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't really want to hear stuff they don't know.
Right.
They want to hear everything that they love, and that's the maybe 3/4 or 80% of the audience. And then there's another smaller but important part of the audience which doesn't want to hear the same old. They want to hear songs that they never get to hear that are from that year, and they want to get deeper into the history and rediscover stuff. And in some sense, the smaller one is the one that drives the show because they're the real fans, not the casual fans. But you need the bigger part because they're the ones who pay for the whole thing, And that was a real learning process in the beginning because I just wanted to do the songs I loved and the songs that we discovered that were great songs, but maybe not so famous. So, we would get subscribers and then have to kind of cajole them to stay because they said, well, I don't know these songs. I never heard of this, and you have to, when you're hearing a song you don't know, it's harder to track it, if you're hearing it one time in a concert. So it was a real learning process. And the things that I thought were famous that everybody would know didn't necessarily weren't necessarily known by the large part of the audience. Like like Anyone Can Whistle, and I thought, oh, everybody knows that song, and it turns out no, not so much.
Yeah, right.
But so that was a learning process.
Do you have to then go and obtain rights, or are you just doing?
No, because Town Hall has the rights. Town Hall has all the licenses to do songs, from ASCAP and BMI and all that. So no, I didn't have to do that.
All right. So when you sit down to write the show, you've now selected songs based on whatever year that is. You have decided this show, that show, this show, that show. About how many shows are represented each year, approximately?
Well, in the beginning, Town Hall would warn me the subscriptions are down. What are you going to do? And you'd have to reinvent it and change it because it's evolved a lot. Like I said, we had 3 stars in the first show. Some of the casts in recent years has been as high as 40 people in the show. We've added dance to the show. Around the 6th or 7th year, we added dance to it. So it became not a concert but a show. I mean, I think it's an important distinction when it became like that. We've had huge dance troupes in it. We added a chorus to it so that we could do big production numbers and not just solos and duets and stuff. And Town Hall doesn't have a big backstage, so to get 40 people backstage and get them on and off the stage is a big endeavor. But it's evolved, and there's different every. I guess I put it like this: as soon as I thought that the audience was getting too familiar with the formula, I would change the formula and do something different. But in the beginning, at least, to answer your question, I would pick a year, research that year, and the fun part for us is myself and the musical director Ross Patterson, who's been my musical director for 20 years, the whole 20 years. He was the first one and been with us the whole time. Fabulous musician. We would play through every song from that year. We would get the sheet music and play through everything and say, that's a great song. Let's keep that. This is not so good. We're not. And there's a safe pile and a throw-out pile. And it was always the same kind of thing. Like you'd play something and say, wait, who wrote that? That's fabulous. Oh, Irving Berlin wrote that. Of course it's fabulous. Everything would rise to the top, that. And every now and then we'd come across a song that we didn't know by somebody we didn't know. And it's what a wonderful song. We really need to do that. Great story about that is you will know who this is. Nancy Anderson. She's a 3-time Drama Desk nominee. And she wasn't not so well known at the time when we first used her. And we had a show on in New York's famous Blizzard of 2003, and it was also Stephanie J. Block's first show in New York. I hired her. I was the first person to hire her in New York. She'd come from California, and it was a Blizzard, and our shows were on Monday nights when most shows were not on. And even the Phantom of the Opera did not go on that night. They were always on Mondays. But they didn't go on because of the blizzard. But Town Hall said to me, you can go on if you can get your cast assembled. And Stephanie was living in New Jersey. To this day, I don't know how she got to us, but somehow we assembled the cast. And somehow or other, 400 people out of the sold out 1,500 managed to get to Town Hall.
That's
And
amazing.
it remains my favorite show of all time because they were the hottest audience you could ever imagine. They were so proud of themselves for having gotten there.
Well,
Stephanie,
they were clearly
they,
determined to see a show that night, and they were going to enjoy themselves.
They love Broadway by the year. But Nancy did the show that we had found. The title of the song was "It Don't Mean Nothing to Me," from a show called Naughty Cinderella in 1925. That was the year,
wow.
1925. And so nobody had heard of the show ever. Nobody had heard of the song ever. And we had worked up this performance of this thing that stopped the show. It just absolutely stopped the show. It's brilliant. And you never stop the show with a song nobody's ever heard of. You know, that's the hardest thing in the world to do, but she did. And Town Hall was very nice about this because all the subscribers were mad because there were another 1,100 who didn't get to see it. So they decided to redo the show in June and offer the subscribers a chance to see it again. We couldn't cast everybody the same; not everybody was available. But Nancy was in it, as was Stephanie Block, and we did it again. And Nancy stopped the show again with the same song. And it's my favorite story about the power of performance, even when the people don't know it. But the key to the series has always been, once you know what the music is, you have to cast the show to fit the songs. You need the right singer to do the right song. I made early mistakes and learned that very quickly. That was the key. In fact, I think it was one of the things that Stephen the other part of the Stephen Holden story was after we decided to do Broadway by the year for real and have its own name and its own series and with people being able to keep their seats, we decided we would do 4 concerts a year, and that remained the same. And the first concert of the second season, which was the first time it was called Broadway by the Year, Stephen Holden came back from the Times, and this was a money review. We did the Broadway musicals of 1933. And that was a real money review, and the subscriptions just flew. And wow. That became the basis of our success, was that first year in that core subscription list that came out of that. So God bless Stephen Holden for coming and trusting. And from there on in, we were flying.
Well, you're describing this, the way that it builds, which I think is important for listeners to understand, that it's rare when something you do it once and you've hit it out of the park so far that you then are set forever. It takes a while for audiences to become familiar with the show and to build to it, which I think is exactly what you're describing. And obviously you've been doing it for a while and it's highly successful and well regarded. I'm just curious about the writing of the show again. Are you mostly concentrating on history of the shows, or is it just interstitial material between the numbers? What is it that you're writing?
That's a super good question. The way I do it is this, because it's about a year, I like to set context. So I usually have an opening monologue before, and sometimes we start with the song, sometimes start with me. But either way, I do the same thing at the beginning when I first come out. And that is sort of talk about the year itself. And I always start sort of on the cosmic level and then work my way down slowly to Broadway and the shows. But in this opening monologue, I will talk about the year, what was going on in 1925, internationally, then nationally, then locally in New York, then the things like the fun little trivia, fun things like what was invented that year, what were the prices of things that year, stuff like that engaged you. When you discover that, like in 1965, for instance, was the first year that soda vending machines existed.
Wow.
It was the first year that it was the year that Gatorade, the Slurpee and Gatorade were invented. Things like that, and that the minimum wage was $1 an hour, but you could go to Harvard for $1,700 a year, instead of $2 million, whatever it is now. But so it's stuff like that really engages the audience, and that sense of nostalgia, like what was going on at that, because a lot of this series is really kind of an insider thing. Tourists don't really know about it, but New Yorkers do. And people in the tri-state area do. I love the fact that there are people who fly in for this show. We have a guy who works for an airline who lives in California, who's a subscriber, and he uses his ability as a guy who works for the airline to fly in and see these shows. And he's been a subscriber since the beginning. There was a couple who lives in Ohio, and whenever they come in, they come to see Broadway by the year, and so there's this real loyal following for it. But the writing of it starts with that, and we work our way down to the city, what was going on. Like 1965 was the year of the famous blackout in 1965, and that the whole Northeast corridor went out during rush hour one summer night, and for several days after that. And the audience would go, "Oh, I remember that." One of the things I always love is when you can hear the audience reaction, when they remember something. And I remember when that happened, I said, you guys are all dating yourselves now. Because one of the pleasures of doing this in the moment with the audience is I have a script, but I ad-lib off of the script all the time based on what the audience gives you, when they react to something.
Sure.
So there's a real sense of communication back and forth with them.
All right. So what would you say are the biggest challenges that you go through every year, and how do you solve them?
Oh gosh, the biggest challenges are.
Is it casting and getting people in? Is it?
Yes. I mean, because this is a one night only event, and when somebody gets another gig and it's a money gig, I mean, I pay everybody, but I can't possibly pay them, out of a one night gig what they might get if they get a TV commercial or they get cast in a Broadway show or a regional.
Of course.
So this particular case, I had a show on this Monday night, whatever month it was, and I had another Broadway by the year 4 weeks later, so I announced the cast. I said, these 6 stars are going to be in a show next month. And I lost every single one of them.
Wow.
They all got gigs. I had to recast the entire thing on the fly. I mean, that's always the biggest challenge when somebody gets sick or something happens and you have to recast in the moment. I did a show once where we did a Jerome Kern show. I should add parenthetically that because Broadway by the Year was very successful, we started to do a lot of other shows at Town Hall that were spin-offs of one kind or another. I mean, at one point I was doing 12 shows a year at Town Hall. 4 of them were Broadway by the Year, and there were all these other things I was doing. One of them was a show devoted to Jerome Kern. And we had the guy who played Joe, who sang Old Man River in the most recent revival at that time at Lincoln Center, had done it. And he had a lot of cachet for having done it. Great, big baritone voice. And I knew he was on a boat that was coming up the East Coast, and he was going to be docking in New York on the day of our show. He was going to come from the boat and sing Old Man River, get back on the boat, and go back.
Wow.
Back up the coast. That's the nature of the casting is you get the best people and then you work it out. On the day of the show, he calls me and says, "I'm here, but this was right after 9/11." He said, because of Homeland Security, I'm not allowed to leave the boat and go back on the boat. And if I do, it's going to be a $700 fine. I said, well, I haven't got a budget for that. I can't do that. So how do you do a Jerome Kern show without Old Man River? So here it is that afternoon of the show. And all these white people on the cast, I'll sing it. I said, no, you can't sing it. You can't do that. And what if we do a group version? No, that's not going to work. And at that point I had a director, and the director was freaking out. And, and I said, we'll figure it out. Don't worry, we'll figure it out. I mean, one of the things I think I've always brought to this is a sort of calm at the center, because I always believe whatever you do, you'll work it out. Something will happen. And
going back just a half a step, what you're doing is you're imposing, as we talked about earlier, your persona on the evening, and that persona is a calm, steady hand, and whatever you put on, the audience will love anyway.
That's always the hope. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, go on.
Well, thank you. So one of the performers, Ron Bomer, who's become somewhat famous in other theater things, said, hey, I've got a friend of mine who sang the song On the Road. I think he's up in Harlem now. I don't think he's working. I said, his name was Roosevelt something. I can't remember his whole name at the moment, but he I said, call him. Let's see if he's free to do it. He called him up. He got him. And he said, the guy would do it if I just paid his cab fare. I said, done. So he couldn't get there until after the tech was over. So, and this is a union, town hall is a union house. He couldn't rehearse it on the stage, but we could do it in the hall, And I said, can you do it a cappella without, not a cappella, can you do it without a microphone, off mic, unplugged as we call it? And he said, sure. He had a big voice, and he said, that will be thrilling. So we rehearsed. We didn't get a chance to rehearse it on the stage. He had the overalls, the whole thing. He looked like he was like born for the part. And he came out, and he stopped the show with it. And the director at the time, I won't say who it was, he said, I've learned a huge lesson from this, that to be calm and things will work out. And he's since become a very successful director. I had given him his first director jobs before that. He directed for me a few times, and he's become a very successful director. And he credits me for giving him that sense of don't worry, it'll work out. Just relax.
That's the magic of the theater. It always somehow works out. I don't know how, but it almost always does. I'd like to chat for just a moment or two about Michael Feinstein. So,
Sure.
Have you actually created shows for him?
Yes, he's been a great gift to me, not only in giving me the opportunity to start doing shows at nightclubs, which has become a big part of what I do besides the big concert stuff. He was very, very generous. He's a lovely guy. And what happened was Lincoln Center decided to start doing a series of shows in what that time was called the Allen Room. It has a different room name now, but it's about a 400-seat theater that overlooks Central Park, a big picture window behind. And he wanted, because he's a busy guy, he's on the road all the time, he wanted somebody to help him put these shows together. And he knew what I was doing for him and elsewhere. And he said, would you produce, write, and direct the shows for me? And I was very flattered, and naturally said yes. And so for about 2 years, I did that until they decided they needed to go in-house. They were losing money, and they needed to not have an in-house person. They wanted to have an in-house person do it. And but it was a great experience for me because this might sound terrible, but I do what Michael Feinstein does without his talent. I mean, I do everything he does except sing and play the piano. But the shows are very similar. He talks about the history of Broadway or the history of the music, and so we would have these long late night conversations when we were working on the choices of material. We would go through material and say, let's do that. And I would do a principal casting, from he knew people, he would suggest to people, and I'd say, hey, but you don't know this one, you should use so and so. And so I brought him Jessie Mueller for the first time, who is now obviously a big star, but she was not a big star then, and I put them in touch. People like that. So it was a great opportunity for me to say to Michael, here are these great people you don't know because you're not in New York all the time. And these are people I know from my experience, and they would be great in these things. There was a wonderful singer by the name of Laurie White, who he met because of me, who was a 3-time Grammy Award winner from Nashville. And she was fantastic. And he used her all the time after that. So, I mean, one of the things that I've always loved about my shows is that it became a springboard for people to get other opportunities. I could only take somebody so far. I can give them a town hall stage or a show with Michael Feinstein, but I can't make them internationally famous, but I can give them a stepping stone. I can give them an opportunity to be seen by other people.
Sure.
And,
well, everybody has to start somewhere, and you're that somewhere.
Well, I'm somewhere. I'm not at the bottom of the rung. I'm somewhere in the middle rung where you can use it as a springboard to get other jobs.
Sure.
And whenever somebody says I got a job because I was seen, that I beam over that stuff. I love that. So
what inspires you now? What makes you keep going on this? Why do you keep doing this? What is the inspiration?
It's I started out as a writer. And so I loved writing. I love telling stories, but writing is a lonely endeavor.
It is indeed.
as you know. So getting the opportunity to do this with people and getting immediate, rather than, when you write a book, you never know what anybody thinks. I one time saw somebody reading one of my books while they were walking on the street. And I actually followed them for blocks and blocks as a stalker, because I was so, my God, he's reading one of the books we wrote. It's amazing. I mean, that's the closest I got to interaction with somebody who's reading in the moment. But this, if it works right away, you put it on the stage and people either laugh or they applaud, wildly. And,
Sure.
and you know instantly if it works or not. The audience tells you everything. And so the immediate gratification is a wonderful thing. So I love doing it. So I went from writing books to being a critic, which I still am. My wife and I are still columnists covering theater. So we get to see everybody still, but but creating the shows is so much fun, and it's always different. Everything's different all the time. I
Right.
mean, in a bad way, the virus that has put everybody out of business is at the same time. I always like to say to my wife, terrible things provide opportunities. You just have to look for where the opportunity is. So what we're doing now are these concerts that are not live streamed, because I saw all the problems with live streaming, all the blackouts, all the technical things that could go wrong, and always do. And I said, why don't we, have people record their stuff? Because all the theater companies, they're giving everything away. Here's this thing for free, because they want to engage their audience. They feel like they need to do something to participate and help. Everybody's at home. Let's give them something to watch. And I think that's all wonderful. It's a great thing, except these are also the people who are out of work and need the help the most. So I had what appears to be a rather original idea in this time in our lives, which is to actually pay performers to perform.
Yep. And I've seen
I did a GoFundMe campaign.
I've seen 3 of your shows.
Yep.
On the online shows. They're fantastic.
Thank you. I decided I would do this GoFundMe campaign and see if I can get money ahead of time, so people weren't begging for money. Tip me, please, because I'm performing. They say, you're going to get paid, and here's money for it, right? On the barrelhead. And these lovely, generous people who do have been able to keep their jobs, or people who have savings, whatever, who love this world, have donated, whether it's $10 or $500 or anything in between. And I mean, at this point, I've collected about $13,000.
Wow.
GoFundMe campaign. And I've been able to do the 4th concert. Will be coming out shortly, I think, after, I know this is taped, but it'll be out after this airs. And I think I have enough money to go to a 5th. So I'll keep doing them as long as I can keep raising money. So I hire people to perform, and there are a lot of limitations, of course, because they can only perform at home, and a lot of them, they don't, either if they happen to play the ukulele, or they're quarantining with somebody who plays the piano, great. Otherwise, we do it remotely. We found people who will play for them and send them the music electronically, and then we put it together. And so it's what we used to call live on tape. And then I do the same thing I do with all my shows. I impose myself on them by providing introductions and introduce. I record my stuff and put it in front of each thing, so each performance is not compared to the one before it. Everyone has its own
Sure.
sort of some place without.
You're providing introductions and interstitial material, just like you do, probably in a bigger way on the bigger show.
Yeah. My formula has never really changed that much as far as that goes, because that's the kind of a unique thing. Most people don't do that. It's a concert, but mine's are sort of a concert with, and the information I give is not meant to be academic or anything. It's meant to be entertaining and informative at the same time, without being too long. I always like to think of it as cocktail chatter, the kinds of stories you might say, oh, I heard this funny thing or this interesting thing about such and such, and that they could take that away from it. And I never try to talk too long. I always keep the same thing in mind that I kept from that very beginning. They're not coming about me, they're coming about the performers, but I provide a little jewel setting for each performance.
Well, if I may say so, I think that you have it at the exact length between performances. It's like
Okay.
a minute or so of just a little bit of background and who these people are, and then off they go. Because a huge number of the people that I've seen in your shows are not what you would call household names, and they need a little bit of introduction.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you want to know, why are they there? Who are they? What did they do that they deserve this spot in the show? So it's nice to be able to tell people, it's a 3-time Drama Desk nominee, or they starred in 6 Broadway shows. You may not have heard of them, but they're the real deal, So it's nice to be able to give them their credits, give the credit to the performers, to the audience, so the audience knows, hey, this is a special person. I don't know who they are, but boy, they're really great.
So believe it or not, we've been chatting for almost an hour, and we're going to wind this thing down a little bit. And so I'm wondering, you've already told us a couple of fantastic, strange, oddball, quirky, funny stories. I'm wondering, do you have one in particular that you might have in your back pocket of something that happened or that was very funny that you can share with the audience?
I sort of told one of them already, which is that 19. That snowstorm story, but there's another thing that it depends if you know who he is, and maybe you don't have to know. But there's I think it's 4-time Tony nominee, Mark Cuden,
Yes,
who was in our shows a lot for a period of time, and he's been on TV a lot. He was he's a Broadway star. He's done a lot of TV and everything, but and an extraordinarily reliable performer. The audience loves him. And this was the one time he was doing a number and it was going off the rails. And I'm on stage watching this, and by the way, and he's got these great bow legs. He looks like an old cowboy performer because his knees are bad, so he has this sort of bow-legged thing. And I'm saying this for a reason, because he's doing this number and he's just off the rails. It's not going well. He's not winning the audience over. And I'm watching him in the moment, figuring it out, how to get him back. And at the end of the number, to my astonishment, he did a full split on these horrible legs, and nobody thinks of him as a dancer at all. And he did this incredible split. And if my jaw could hit the ground, it would have, because I couldn't believe he had done that. But it's the idea of a performer will do anything to win, and he did. The audience went nuts. And I thought, my God, what a thing. It was extraordinary that he would go to that length to get that audience back. He was so intent upon winning that moment. I've never forgotten it. It was just amazing.
Well, I've never met him, but I know lots of people who know him and always rave Mark Cuden. He's always thought of very highly in the theater world, for sure.
Oh,
Broadway world.
Yes.
All right. So last question for you. Do you have a solid piece of advice or a tip for those who are trying to break into the business, and what it is that they can, help their career go, or maybe somebody who's in a little bit, but trying to get to the next level?
Sure. If I may, this is a little longish and also digressive.
That's
I'll
fine.
tell a metaphorical story, which I tell actually every year to the people in the Broadway's Rising Stars concert that I mentioned that we did every summer with people coming out of performing arts schools. When I was much younger, I hitchhiked around the country, and I was in Northern California, and I got picked up by this old couple in a Cadillac. I'm a little guy and not threatening, so people picked me up. I did very well as a hitchhiker. And they took me, they were on their way to a rodeo, this little local rodeo in Ruth, California, up in the mountains in Northern California. And they took me as their guest to see the rodeo. And so now they're going back the way they came, and I'm still going the other direction. So the rodeo, I say goodbye to them, and I'm hitchhiking my way out. And I got picked up by the Brahma bull rider from the rodeo and his girlfriend in their truck. And I said to the guy, how do you practice being a Brahma bull rider? And he said, you can't practice it. You can only do it at the rodeo.
Wow.
And I thought later on, I thought to myself, that's the perfect metaphor for show business. You can't do it at home. You have to be in front of an audience. You have to do it. The only way to get better is to do it. And hearkening back to that 11 o'clock numbers with the 3 stars who started out, they were not famous, none of them van. But the fact that they got to do that every week for 8 months, every Thursday night, gave them an extraordinary level of experience of getting out on stage all the time and honing their craft. Carol J. Bufford's one of the handful of people who has become somebody who makes a living as a performer. Scott Coulter does symphony stuff all over the world now with his own company. And Christina Bianco not only has about 40 million views on YouTube in the voices that she does
Streisand.
Impressionist, but she also played Fanny Brice in the first production of Funny Girl in Paris, just right before the virus hit, and she got rave reviews. And she's a huge star actually in England and France now, bigger than she is in New York. All of them are very loyal about the fact that they got a chance to do this stuff and learn and not learn, but get better at their craft by virtue of that repetition of being on stage. So anyway, we told we always tell our performers, you've got to do it. It's not, and this leads to the other part of the answer to your question, which is, I say to people all the time, in this business, you have to make your own opportunities. You can't just wait for somebody to cast you. Create something if you can. Find a way to put yourself on stage. And this comes out of the nightclub stuff. I mean, we had this woman who was from Italy, who'd come out of AMDA, and she was a wonderful performer, but had a thick Italian accent. I said, you're just not going to get cast that much. You should do concert stuff. You should do nightclub stuff, because there you can be you, be the beautiful singer you are with the exotic accent that people will be charmed with, and there aren't that many opportunities that way. So I tell people to create your own opportunities. That's my biggest advice to people is figure out what you have to offer, write it, collaborate with people, whatever you have to do, but get yourself on stage and get experience and get an audience and hone your craft.
Well, Scott, that is fantastic advice, because I think that is the way to do it. You can't become a writer without writing. You can't become a performer without performing, and you can't be a performer really without performing in front of an audience. So I think that is extremely valuable advice. I've been speaking for a little bit more than an hour with Scott Siegel, who is well known in New York for putting on Broadway by the Year at Town Hall and various other concert venues. And Scott, I can't thank you enough for coming on StoryBeat today. This has been just absolutely illuminating.
Well, thank you. I obviously I love to talk, so it's great that you gave me the opportunity to do it. I appreciate it.
And so we've come to the end of today's StoryBeat. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a rating or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.